So, just what card games are the youngsters playing these days? So make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more content. So this was some interesting data that popped up out of Japan, actually showcasing some popularity of card games amongst youngsters. Now, this was a sample size of 400 parents interviewing school duelist. Living in, it was Tokyo, Kanagawa, Chiba, Saitama, and I believe some areas of Kyoto, if I recall correctly, for this. So this was interesting, to say the least. Now, of course, Pokemon taking up the biggest translated part of this curve. 69.3% of the engaged audience here ends up playing Pokemon. It's also kind of interesting that when you look at that conversion, a little bit underneath 30% or 30% don't actually play Pokemon. Is Pokemon just, I guess, not that engaging to that percentile? I don't actually know. I'm a little bit intrigued by that number myself. So that is an interesting one to take away. Now, we bring it up here on the rear, or directly behind that, at 24.8% is the One Piece card game. Now, this is pretty interesting to see that, One Piece has overcome a lot of what has been, kind of the boundary with things. It's also a TV show that up until very recently was continuing to air. Actually, season 1 just finished with 1,000+ episodes, which is such a crazy record that they were able to keep One Piece going for that long. But interestingly enough, about 100 out of these 400 are actually choosing to play One Piece. Now, we do have Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still here. It has not left the premise, all right? 22.5% of these interviewees have played the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Now, what I would have loved to have seen, does this count towards Rush Duel? Is Rush Duel factored into this? Or are we combining Rush Duel and Yu-Gi-Oh! Together to actually factor in for this number? I would have loved to have actually seen that. But if you think that, Yu-Gi-Oh! In its modern incarnation is falling off, I mean, the answer is we all need a new anime. We need something to draw in players to want to watch. I mean, that's such a counterintuitive argument from years ago where we had said, we don't need an anime for this, and how times have greatly changed on that front. So I'm a little bit worried. I mean, One Piece does have an anime at 24.8, while Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at 22.5. Without a current airing anime. I mean, they do have the Chronicles, but that's kind of interesting. Now, here's an interesting one for you. Duel Masters is at 19% of this field. Now, what's very interesting about this is Duel Masters throughout the years has been the game that I feel like caters more towards duelist in like the middle school to like the high school range. Typically, you're going to see a lot more enjoyers of that game, because I'm not going to say Duel Masters is the most complicated, but it does very much feel like a game that, if you had a little bit more time and understanding and enjoyability with, I think you could have a little bit more fun with that. So 19% is not terrible. We also had 15% dedicated to Battle Spirits, Bandai's other game. Now, it's kind of interesting to me that Battle Spirits is actually holding so high on this list. But to be fair, Battle Spirits has a lot of cool collabs. They, as a game, have some of the more interesting stuff that has kind of come through in the fairly more recent times. So I think that one's actually kind of cool. Digimon holding in at 14.3%. Bandai killing it here with 3 different card games in the top cut for this. That's crazy. This also does kind of prove, how popular Digimon still is to a fraction of the community. You might not be the most excited to see that, Digimon is still very high up on this list, but I think it's doing just fine. Cardfight Vanguard coming in at 14. I am not surprised to see this. They've really been with their latest campaigns of like pushing into like Koro comics and trying to get more of the youngsters kind of involved in, you know, the current era of card games. Yeah, Vanguard's current lifeblood is going after the younger audience and trying to get them interested in playing the game, and that's fine. All things considered, I mean, it's not a great number, but it is telling that, you know, getting involved in the comic industry, the manga industry, having a manga going in Koro every week, you know, or every month is actually helping. Then we have Mushi King, the insect sacred treasure. I don't know, or actually I don't know a lot about insect treasure at all, so can't really say much about that. Shadowverse coming in at 13.5. You know, Shadowverse does have its own digital online client. Whether or not, you know, you want to play the digital client version or you can go to the physical card game version, you can go with either or here, honestly. You've got options available to you, and I think that's what can make Shadowverse look appealing to certain people. When you look at things, it's because, you know, you have multi-platforming at your disposal to figure out where you want to go. So that's not bad. We also have Kanji Monsters. I don't know much about this game either. And then we have Weiss. Weiss coming in at 12.3. Once again, Weiss is kind of in the same category as Duel Masters. I feel like that's a game that the older you get, you know, you hit middle school, you hit, high school age limits, that, you know, more players are going to look at Weiss. Weiss isn't an overly complicated game in any sort of fashion. The problem with Weiss is the demographic. They've not, unlike Union Arena, who, you know, has been hitting more of like the mainstream animes to get people involved. It is kind of interesting to see, you know, while Weiss doesn't exactly have the crazy titles that you see Union Arena have, you know, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. ZX, that's a name. ZX has been around for years. ZX has been one of those games that really, it's not like a crazy game, but we do get to see that it is consistently mentioned across the board with card games, which is kind of crazy. Now we go down here to the other. We go down to the 11.5 category. We had no Union Arena. We had no Magic the Gathering. It's kind of interesting to see, you know, this is among elementary school, you know, card game enthusiasts. So kind of keep that, you know, in mind here. I figured Union Arena would be a little bit higher up because, I mean, they're pulling in, you know, a lot more titles that I feel like people would like. But I guess it also might check the same marks as like Duel Masters and Weiss, where you look at some of the series and, you know, involvements they might have. I mean, Duel Masters is kind of the exception because Duel Masters was also marketed through Koro to younger, you know, generations. But I feel like some of the mechanics and things get complicated. Weiss's content that they have available is to anime that usually would cater towards an older generation. I feel like same thing with Union Arena. But no, Magic the Gathering is not surprising. To my understanding, I think Magic it's very small in Japan, but also kind of expensive. You also got to remember, I mean, like, Pokemon's a game that I can go spend $20 and have a deck. More people are going to be enticed to do that. You know, One Piece on the JP. I mean, there's expensive parts to it, but it's not crazy. Same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! On their side of the game has multiple rarities, and it's not expensive. You have, across the board with all these card games, very good examples as to why others are being successful, whether or not it be their advertising methods, whether or not it be the, you know, the game rules and mechanics. It all comes down to appeal. And I'm not surprised, to say the least. So does anything here shock you, surprise you, you know, you think is absolutely crazy? Because I don't really think that this is a terrible list of things. It does kind of paint a picture, you know, on the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, when you are looking at the younger generation. And I mean, you gotta think about it this way. You gotta look at the JP side of things and compare it into the American side and kind of go from there. So, we'll see. So please, comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back. You learned it, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.